Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the lecture for March 2011, the workflow walkthrough. I'm going to be continuing the shot that I started last month in the first part of the workflow walkthrough. You may notice something different. That's right, I have new glasses. What do you think? Nice, right? No, really. We are in a new office. This is the office. This is my desk at work, and I decided to I started to bring the video mails here so that I can have everything actually in one place, and things can be a little bit easier for me. But here we are, and hope you enjoy. So the acoustics are a little bit better in here, and the computer I'm using actually for this demo is a lot faster than the other one I've been using. So we're going to get, hopefully we're going to get a little bit more done in the new office. I have a huge announcement coming up. Watch the member news, that little blog post that's at the top of the member area. Watch for an email. But there's a huge announcement coming up. I'm very excited about it. I'm going to be announcing it to you guys first, and just be on the lookout for that. It's very, very big and exciting. Okay, so where did we leave off? Basically, the part one of this lecture was to start on basically creating a workflow that is editable, that is easy to use, that makes a lot of sense, and will serve you deep into production. The first thing that I said was you need to write down your workflow. So again, I'm just going to reiterate, if you haven't written out your workflow ever, then you're at a huge disadvantage. There's no way you can possibly be 100% up on your workflow if you've never written it out, never written it down, and just seeing what the thing looks like. If it's all in your head, you're not going to get that much feedback from it. You also need to have a method for editing your workflow. So writing it down is obviously an easy way to do that, because you can just edit that document. Your workflow is kind of a way to take the guesswork out of your animation process. Because if you follow your workflow every single time, there won't be any guesswork. You can just make the next logical step, the next step in your workflow, I should say. And why that is nice is because there's way too much guesswork in student work and junior animator work and all that stuff. We need to take the guesswork out, because if you are, the way the industry is going is that there has to be slimmer and slimmer deadlines for less and less money, etc. So as the work is getting more and more close to the bone in terms of budgets and schedules, a studio owner or a supervisor or director won't be able to depend on you, won't be able to predict your results and really bank on the work that you can do. Okay, so it's extremely important to be predictable and to be repeatable, to be dependable. All of these things make it so that you are an animator that is a go-to animator. Okay? So where we left off was blocking. And so we're going to take a look at the workflow checklist that I have and see what's coming up for us in Blocking Plus. Turn into copied pairs. Fall back on fundamentals. Arcs, weight check, compare thumbs, watch at speed, make lists for notes. All right. Now let's watch the animation one more time. Okay. To watch it a couple times. So immediately when you sit down, what you want to do is you want to make a list of notes for your shot. Why? Because if you have a list, then you can work very long on your shot without losing that really good, fresh eye that you have right when you sit down at your shot. If you just make a change and then play blast and watch it over and over again, every single time you watch it, you are going to reduce the freshness of your eye, and you're going to be able to see less and less and less. All right, so every single time you sit down at your shot after a long period of time, then you need to make a list. Okay, what I like to do is I like to go just run Notepad. Notepad is my favorite. All right, let's make the font big enough so that you can see it. All right, and then what I do is I just watch the animation. Okay, and as it's playing, I just look at the frame number and I just put my notes in. Okay, so I think that around 110 is that lean back. I think you can lean back more into that step. The pose around 60 to 70. I think that pose feels a little weak and a little bit top heavy. Let's see here. I'm just going to type an end right here. End pose, pose cheat more towards camera. Okay. And what I will do is I will go through the entire animation over and over until I cannot see any more notes. And then I'm just going to work with that note list open and to the side so that I never run out of ideas how to improve the animation as I'm working. But let's go back to the workflow cheat PDF and see what kinds of things we're going to be looking out for in Blocking Plus. First thing we need to do is turn our step keys into copied pairs. One of the things that I always repeat is that if you have step keys, that you need to designate what those step keys represent, because a step key will instantly change to the new key and it'll hold until there's another new key. Well, if you turn that into into spline rather, then there's going to be a just really swimmy, soupy interpolation between all three of those keys I just mentioned. However, if you do a little bit of work ahead of turning it into spline, then what you'll get is copied pairs, which are a great way to designate your hold areas. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this animation smartly into copied pairs by copying some of the poses on which I do want to hold, and then adding a few more breakdowns and in-betweens in step mode so that when I switch to spline, the animation isn't destroyed. Fall back on fundamentals. What that means is that we're going to use fundamental adjustment in order to give a stronger performance from the scene. So if I want him to look happier, for instance, I'm going to just imagine which fundamental is going to give me that result and make that small fundamental change. I'm not going to go into it thinking there's a whole lot of stuff to reblock or redo and without a plan, because workflow is about plan. I'm going to go in and just adjust that. And I'm always going to keep a good eye on arcs. So until we move forward, let's wait to move forward on the workflow until we get to copied pairs. So I'm going to do this as quick as I possibly can. Ostensibly, this shot, if I do finish the shot in this lecture, I'm not planning on it, but if I do finish it, this will be a 250 frame shot animated in about 2.5 hours. So that would be fast for anybody, especially me. I'm not necessarily a fast animator. Okay, so let's let's see here. I do know that like this is going to be a moment of movement of transition. So I don't really need to actually set another key to designate this hold. I do have copied pairs right here though. As I was working in the other lecture, as you can see, I did copy this pose to right here so that this transition would work. But let's see here and see if my pose is copied. All right, it's not. So I'm going to grab these keys, all these keys, which are on the entire body, and I'm going to say, okay, this transition back to this pose, I need to happen over what is this, 78 to 89, so 11 frames. That's fine. I know that I'm going to need basically a breakdown right here, so I'm going to go forward maybe 3 frames of anticipation. Let's do 4. Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly just anticipate this out just a little bit before he all right, now he moves forward before he comes back. All right. Now my tangent type has already been turned to spline, meaning any new breakdown that I'm adding right now is being added in spline. The advantage of that is I get to see, as I'm adding breakdowns, what it's going to look like as a splined animation rather than copied pairs. And that's great because it's what we're going to turn it into. So instead of adding a stepped breakdown and then splining it and seeing the result, we're just going to we're going to see that feedback immediately. Let's see here, see if I copied this pose. It looks like I did. Every single time I animate, I do it the same way every time. That's what workflow is about. So on this keyframe on frame 122 and this keyframe on 137, you'll notice if I go back and forth between them, there's a key on every single control, and it's the same key, even though I was in step mode. So it's not necessarily about working in step mode 100% for your splines. On the other hand, if you can get you'll start getting enough practice that it just comes naturally, and you can work that way. I've done a couple shots, so it works out. Excuse me. Okay, so I know that I'm going to have a decent transition right here. This is all keyed on 2s and 1s, especially in this section. I have my performance texture. Remember, the difference between performance texture and non-performance texture is stuff that is a deliberate action and is a different size, a contrasting size, or speed or breadth of a gesture, and you have to put it in, you have to plan it for it, and it needs to be in your blocking. Non-performance texture would be something that you add later. You can pepper that into the scene. So if the character steps right here, and I do just a little bit of overlap on the very tip top of the flour sack and his little ear/arms thingies, that would be non-performance texture. But the little flittering of his feet, that's performance texture. That's already in there. And since, as you can see, the keys are very dense in this section, very, very dense, I know that that's going to spline out pretty perfectly. So he lands right here, and his feet kind of sag down. But I'm pretty sure that what's going to happen is this is all going to be very floaty, and really this pose is more that his feet, after he impacts, fall down first and kind of are starting to pull him over the side. So I need to add a breakdown on the feet. That's for sure. So I'm just going to grab these hips and roll forward 2 frames. Oops, that's not the hips. Looks like I'm not getting quite the performance out of that control. All right, so we're just gonna approximate it with the legs for now and see when we're splining later what kind of dynamic we can get out of this body. It's been a month since I animated this guy, so the advantage is that my eyes are very fresh. The disadvantage is that my familiarity and my comfort with this rig is very bad right now. So he hits. All right, that's looking too fast actually. Let's just have it start to fall. And this poor candy wrappering, I just wonder if there's any control I can use to unwrap that candy wrappering on his. There we go. All right. So it's very linear, and what I'll do is I'll make sure that arc looks good. I'll basically add a breakdown when it's time to spline, because this is just a splined linear transition, and it's stretching really badly, and the body is still on a step mode, as a step key as well. So when the body's actually moving in spline, that'll look a little bit better. Another point to be made is that if you can predict the results of Maya, if you know what Maya is going to do, then you'll be in a lot better shape. Because, look, I mean, like right here, I know that as these feet fall, they're going really linearly, but the impression is going to be way different when the body is splined out. What does that mean? I can wait until I spline the body to make any adjustments on the feet. Some people might look at that and say, like, oh man, I have to fix that, and then they would break down maybe on twos or ones the arc of those feet. Then they spline everything, and then all that work is for nothing, because you have to go back and make it work with the rest of the spline body. This section is going to be very, very soupy, but the reason that I'm not adding a lot of breakdowns on the body in this section is because he's on the corner here. Because my rig is going to have a lot of scene interaction, I'm not going to add a lot of keys right there, right now. All right, I need to know in spline mode exactly how, where the crease is happening and what part of his body is creasing over that corner. That's another thing that I don't have the ability to do right now. This little wave motion, again, keyed on twos, and then he lands and kind of presents and whatever. Okay, so the main moving holds have been turned into copied pairs already, and we're ready to go to spline. So let's see what's going on. Now, I predict that what's going to happen, the biggest problem that I'm going to see immediately is that my foot falls, my feet are not holding. And if you are, what you can do is you can make sure that you do all of your foot falls on very detailed copied pairs, or I'm kind of at the point where I don't care if I see feet sliding when I spline it, because I kind of know what I was going for, and just copying a key on the foot is really simple and easy and quick, so I don't really stress out too much about it. But some people, when they look at their animation, they see sliding feet, and the whole shot is like, it kind of freaks them out, and they don't know what to do. So it's up to you. So I'm just going to grab all these keys, grab everything, make sure I have everything. And I'm just going to go to spline. Okay? Now, some of my moving holds are going to be a little bit, they're going to move in and out of those moving holds. If you look at this, one thing that's kind of nice about it is that the moving holds don't have, no life to them. They're not completely flat and whatever. I kind of go back and forth depending on what the animation is. Sometimes I will go to Spline and grab all the moving holds, make them flat tangents no matter what, and then just adjust the tangent handles to give them some life. What you can do is, there's no reason that you can't see if it looks better as flat tangents rather than spline. So let me just flat all of these and just see what happens. The problem when you flat everything is that every single key has a slow in and a slow out. So that's not very good. So let's go back, let's spline it, and then let's grab the keys, the full body keys that are moving holds, like so. And we can see which ones they are. And let's flat them. This looks like one. I'm just guessing right here, but I'm probably not too far off with which ones are the moving holds in the body. It's kind of a misnomer now that I'm turning into flat tangents because they're going to turn into unmoving holds. And you know what? After seeing this, I kind of liked it better when everything was splined, to be honest. So let's just spline everything. All right. So now go back to the workflow checklist. If you have a strong workflow, what's going to happen for you, or what you're going to be able to do, is you're going to be able to make a change to the shot that is not like intuition, not just a guess. It is a designated, ordered step in your process. What does that mean? That means you can almost sit down at your animation and just look at your checklist and say, what is next on my checklist? Not, oh man, what's wrong with this scene? And that's the main thing that kind of freaks people out, but it's the best part about workflow. Okay? You should all aspire to get to the point where you're sitting down at your desk with your workflow checklist to the side, and if it's checked off or whatever you're doing, you sit down at your desk, and then you just look at, the first thing you look at is the checklist, and like, oh, what's next? Turn into copied pairs. Okay. And then you turn your shot, and whatever's in front of you, that's what you turn into copied pairs. You see the difference between that and coming into work, sitting down, opening up the shot, like, oh man, this shot's kicking my butt, and then just like scrolling back and forth and like, I don't know, maybe this leg should, and I'm seeing this right now. Like, for instance, this leg, as it comes up, really floats up into this position. That's definitely going to need to be made a lot more snappy. In fact, I want it to anticipate out. That's what that was supposed to be, not just overlap or drag. That was supposed to be anticipation. So what am I going to do? Am I going to grab that and start working on that right now? No, I'm going to go to my workflow first. All right? That's how you can save so much time instead of inundating yourself with what you see and fixing it on the fly. So, turn into copy pairs, fall back on fundamentals. Let's see here if I want to make any fundamental adjustments. Okay. First of all, he's definitely, timing and spacing are fundamentals. Well, timing is, but spacing is intimately involved in timing. I'm seeing that this is so slow and boring that I'm dying. Why it looked good at stepped, again, is because our mind will slide animation around in our head as we're watching it. It's crazy. If you watch a bouncing ball animation that is stepped, in stepped keys, it can be so off. Your mind will imagine that if like, here's the top of the arc, you have a key right here and a key right here, your mind will imagine that it went up and slowed in and slowed out and went into this new pose. You can almost have any timing on a parabolic arc, and your mind will fix it in step mode as you're watching in step mode. Because gravity, inertia, all extremely hardwired into our brains. Right? Someone can throw a ball and you can point to the point on the ground that the ball is going to fall, even as it's on the way up. That's how hardwired these physical rules of the universe are hardwired into our brain. Okay? So your brain is tricking you as you're watching gravity and really like inertial forces and universal laws of physics in your animation. It's really tricking you. So that's definitely something that I want to adjust. He's right here, and then like 8 frames later he's right there. That's no good. No good ski. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy this to frame 4, and I'm going to back him way out. Let's find the controls again. Back him way out. Okay, and remember in Blocking Plus, one of the things you're looking at is watching your animation at speed. Why that's important is because now is the time when you need to really giving yourself tastes of the impression that you're giving the audience. All right. So I always advocate for having a rig that is slim enough and like low poly enough, and the rig is nice that you can just hit Alt V and watch the animation at speed. So that's what I recommend you do. So this is not giving me the impression of gravity. It still feels like it's slowing in, but I don't want to raise him any higher at the head of the shot. So I'm going to go to this keyframe, and I'm actually going to make this a little bit higher so that it feels like it accelerates. Okay. The higher I make this second frame on frame 4, the more the first frame feels like the top of a parabolic arc. You see that? In fact, if I put it even closer, it feels like he just jumped from right here and made it up to almost this distance. Right? If I put it right up against, see the difference there? It feels even more like this is the top of his parabolic arc. But we definitely need to make sure he feels like he's accelerating. Now he does. He feels like he's accelerating into this landing. Okay. Now I'm just going to go forward and watch this and see if there's a fundamental adjustment that I need to make. Yeah, he feels really stiff in the belly, right in this section. So let me go through these keys and see what's going on in the keyframes themselves and see what we're doing here. Okay, that's rotate X. It's overshooting just a little bit. Let me see here. Oops. There we go. And this feels like it's actually bent backwards, is it? Okay, yeah, it is. All right, so it looks like the overlap is actually a little overdone on this control in terms of timing. And I'm actually going to give him just a little bit more stretch on the body as he's coming down here. Okay? Don't be afraid to delete. Well, I'm crazy. What did I just do? I'm deleting these keys like I'm a madman. All right. Don't forget about arcs as well. See, I like how, I'm going to squish him even more. I like how he feels like he's, ooh, I like that as well. You see how the body is kind of traveling away from the spine there? Okay. Love that. I'm going to be very careful to key this very nicely. See how it's like very linear right here? I really want this to be on an arc. So I'm going to just be a little bit more careful. And it's just going too fast right there. Maybe the stretching that's happening is a little too much on these first couple frames. Sometimes what I'll do is, instead of actually making a change, what I'm doing right here is, see how it's going, moving away, traveling away from his body? Okay, a little too much, right? Well, instead of actually just adjusting this key, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the amount of stretch that's happening in between the frame to my advantage by middle mouse dragging and setting a key. That way it happens a lot less. You see that? Now it's happening a lot less. Why am I doing that instead of making making an adjustment and changing the key itself? Because if I want, for instance, 50% of that amount of stretch, I know that I just grab that key that's in the middle mouse drag it to the key that I want, hit S, and set it, boom, 50%, it's done mathematically. That's how Maya works, and why not take advantage of what Maya can do for you? A lot of times Maya screws you up because it's so mechanical and whatever, but why not take advantage of that if you can? So the other thing that you would have to do is, if you wanted it exactly 50%, you'd have to go to the first frame and the second frame and jump in between them and eyeball, is this 50%? Is that I don't really know. If you want it to be 25% and you only have 5 keys, that's easy. You drag 50% once and then you do it again. Then you have 50 and then 25. So you'll see me do that a lot, depending on how long you're sitting here. Okay. All right. So I really, really want to get just a little bit stronger impression of the stretch in the body as well. Why not on this key right before the landing? And he really just does not crunch enough, does he? Let's really bring him down. Now I'm really not liking what's going on with these keys right here. So I'm going to, this is another thing that I do. Frame the keys and delete. All right, this is I go into a lot of depth in this in the workflow lecture, basically, which is the description of workflow, and that lecture is in the store. You should definitely check that out. If you feel like you're getting a lot from this, you might want a refresher on the description of workflow and how to make these fundamental adjustments, falling back on fundamentals. I talk all about that. But I also talk about frame and delete. So I like this key, and I know he definitely needs to get to this one. So I'm actually just going to set a key right here, set a key right here, knowing that both of these keys are what I want, and I'm just going to delete what's in between them. What have I done? I've created basically a wall of keys, and I'm just going to reblock, basically just repose and fix what's in between, because I want it to look better. So he lands, and then basically we just need a little bit more what I call by the book overlap. And then let's actually adjust this one too. Want the body feeling very, very, very malleable and good here. All right. One thing that you need to be careful about is this. What I'm noticing is that I'm not really, nothing I'm doing is giving me the impression I want. I need to go up the chain. I need to go into a higher controller and make sure that I'm getting the physical performance, the physical event on that controller that I'm looking for. Because what I'm kind of seeing is that he's rolling off of this foot but then it's almost like, well, let's just see. Let's see if we can tell from the graph editor what's going on, because I think there's a problem with the Y arc. Ah, there we go. All right. So what I kind of felt was that the Y arc was a little funky, and I think that this is the funky key. So let's try just deleting that and seeing what happens. Oh, yeah, see? I mean, all the difference. You see that? See how much nicer that movement on the main controller is now? I'll tell you what, though, that this foot is definitely not searching out enough. So let's really make it kind of come underneath him. Now, here's one interesting thing is that as you can see, all of the keys on this foot after this key were the same. So I'm going to, with the graph editor open, middle mouse drag to the last, oops, let go too early. Middle mouse drag to the last key. Okay, what's wrong with my, man? Get back on my game. Middle mouse drag to here, let go, set a key. Okay, and the reason I did that is because I'm now going to go into here, delete all of these superfluous keys, and then flat these, and there we go. Now we have the new foot position for this entire section. Okay? Why? Because I just wanted the foot to come underneath him a little bit more before he lands. So let's save this as a new version. I'm going to call this version 6, blocking plus. Oops. Okay. All right. Well, it's worth mentioning that the way that I'm working is a workflow that I've created over years of work and practice and etc. I want to reiterate right now that it's severely advantageous for you to journal your workflow. Write your workflow down in pencil. Don't write it down in ink right now. Don't. I mean, if you type it out, that's nice because you can just move things around and whatever. But the journaling process is actually having just something, either it can be Notepad or Word or Google document or even just like a physical notepad by your desk. And what you do is you just, like at the start, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to say, okay, by 11 I want to have everything completely, all my breakdowns and in-betweens in there, and I want to have, let's say, blocking plus done all the way up through maybe arc checking, and that's a little ambitious, but let's just say that's what I want to do. Then, how long did that take? That took 2 minutes to just establish a goal and how you're going to do it, okay? Then, at 11 o'clock, just look back at what you wanted to do, see if you got there, and see, and write down what you tried that worked. I was framing forward, I was moving like 2 frames ahead and just making a little adjustment on the fly, but lo and behold, it just didn't work out. I got inundated, there's too many controllers on this character, there's too many, whatever. What that will tell you is that when you go back to, maybe you have a bouncing ball rig. Maybe you can do that with a bouncing ball rig, and that has proven, to be successful before. Just like frame forward, tweak, frame, tweak, frame, tweak, and then it looks great. But then when you get onto a production with a controller, with a character that has 350 controls on him, can't do I can't do that thing where I just like frame forward and kind of animate straight ahead. That's only on simple characters. And you'll have written documentation. You'll memorialize that discovery, and it's just so nice after you finish a shot. Go back and look at all that you wrote down. Go back to the very beginning and look at all these things you discovered. It will blow your mind after having finished a shot, all these things that you were thinking at the beginning. It will blow your mind, I promise you. So please consider making that a part of your workflow. All right, so let's just keep moving forward and thinking about the fundamental changes that I want to make here. Kind of feel like his body should kind of the bottom of his body should almost push into the top of his body here. So basically what I'm saying is that there's still a little bit too much or too soon of the overlap in the front part of his body here. So let me just adjust this. I'm animating on 2s here. Basically, just making adjustments that I see fit to give the impression that I want. I'm not too concerned right now on, for instance, little things like, foot penetration, or I don't know. I'm not too concerned with candy wrapping in the feet or deforms in the character. We still want to always be kind of a slave to the performance and to the motion that we want to get, rather than thinking way too early about things like things like that. Even though like on a visual effects show, you're going to encounter a lot of pushback from supervisors and simulation people that your rig has to look good and the mesh has to deform nicely, all these things. But you know what? If the movement doesn't look good, that's what's going to throw the audience off way more than something deforming in a non-beautiful way. So please, be dedicated to the performance, to the motion, and then also keep an eye on it, and don't go so far that you're totally breaking the rig. But I would say that what we have right here, what we're looking at right here, is definitely within the boundaries of what you should, what you can get away with in terms of the character deforms not being quite, on model or whatever. What I'm noticing is that this is a little bit ill-timed, the overlap right here. It needs to be just a little bit snappier and maybe a little bit smaller on this last motion. It needs to be smaller because if you have a motion, basically the rule of thumb is the bigger the motion, the more frames you need, right? Kind of makes sense? So if I need to make this overlap quicker, then it needs to be just a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay. Boop, boop. You know what? I'm not happy with how high he's bouncing. I'm going to change the entire Y arc on this character, and shot be damned, it's what I want, so it's got to be done. It's like the movie Ray. If you've ever seen Ray, there's this character that takes over for like the stage managers, or I'm not sure really what his job is, but he takes over, and there's this part of the movie where the audience is being all loud, and he gets this idea. He's like, okay, bring the house lights down on my count. Ready? 3, 2, 1, and then the house lights go down, and the audience shuts up, because I guess when you turn the lights off in an auditorium, they just hush up. Anyway, point of my story is Ray, after the show, asks him, like, hey, who was counting backstage? And the guy says, oh, that was me. I was having them bring the house lights down to hush the audience. And Ray goes, well, who told you to do that? And he says, well, nobody. It just had to be done. And Ray was so impressed. He was like, "You see that?" And it actually pisses off all the other, guys who were his friends and were his stage managers before. But he's like, "You see that? That's what I need." It's just, it's got to be done. So if you're afraid that you're going to break your animation with adjustments that are going to make it look better, then I'm sorry, but your shots are just not going to turn out the way you want them to. All right, so I just made this a lot higher of a second bounce. I delayed this front foot 1 frame. I flatted the tangent so that he's pushing off for 1 more frame to kind of motivate and explain the higher second bounce. And I think it looks 1,000 times better. Okay. So much better. Okay. So I would say the first 30 flames. Whew, it's early and I have not had my coffee. I would say the first 30 frames are definitely in fully out of blocking and in blocking plus right now. Okay. I would say though that this moving hold needs a lot of work. So let's think about the performance that we want right here. What it is he's observing and looking at this corner and trying to assess. The performance choice was he's trying to think, can I clear this? Can I make it over this? Let's check this out. That's kind of what I was like. If it was me, if it was a biped, if it was a person, it would be like this. I don't know. All right. So that obviously needs to be a lot snappier, and this is something that was kind of destroyed in Spline, because when we watch this right now, look how soupy it is. It's just like wiggling back and forth and whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the take all the controls and actually do some copied pairs for the purposes of moving holds right now. Okay? And that's very easy. All I do is I just grab it and I middle mouse drag the key that I want. So here's a new key 63, one on 70, one on 78. Okay? So he moves up. Let's take 2 frames ahead of this key, not necessarily quite at this key that is right here on 63, and let's just move it to frame 60. Middle mouse drag, set the key. Okay. Now let's go into the graph editor and let's flat that tangent. Okay. Now, why did I do that? I did that because one of the Ask Video mails, I think it was actually the very first Ask Video mail in November of 2010, was, do you have any tips on creating quick moving holds? And the trick is if you have 2 different poses, okay, and it's been destroyed basically by splining, you have like a pose here and a pose here, right? If you go like 1 frame forward, then that can be a very quick moving hold. So you just middle mouse drag this 1 frame forward to like 10 frames forward and 4 frames before this pose, and then what you get is you go into this pose, you're just a little bit of moving hold, and then you go to the next one. So it's a really quick way to get a moving hold. Is it perfect? No, but is it quick and easy and editable? Exactly what we need, exactly what we're talking about. Because of the way Camtasia works, it's screwing up my graphics card and making it so that Maya is not refreshing correctly, so that's why I have to, every once in a while, I have to save and close Maya, so I apologize for doing that. Seems to happen whenever I middle mouse drag. I hope that's not the case, though. Okay. So now we have this character, and I'm actually getting to a point where I'm becoming very familiar with these keys these keyframes. So he leans forward, and oops, looks like that did not work. Let me delete this key. Oh, you know what the problem is? The problem is that all these body keys are the same. All right, well, in that case, then you kind of have to actually just build your own moving hold. So I'm going to, but I am going to middle mouse drag and set a key again. Why? Because I want what's going on this top thing right here to actually, you know, be held as well. So this is what I just did was not a way to get a moving hold, but it is a way to make sure that the copied pair that you're working from, that you're starting from, is actually accurate. So let's just move right here. So he leans forward to look. Let's just have a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of settle and like that. All right, that's too much. And again, remember my trick, I'm not going to just adjust it, but I want something that's sort of like this. So I'm just going to go, you know, close to the beginning here, middle mouse drag, set a key, and now I get a lot less. Okay. Okay, now he looks to the left. Let's do this. I'm going to retime this section just a little bit because my keys are so sparse right now and beautifully open and editable. So we still have so many, you know, so much open space. This is wonderful to work with, okay? So I'm going to have this transition to the look come about 4 frames earlier. I'm going to give another 2 frames to this on either side so that I can put a little bit of anticipation before and after. All right, so let's just have him just ducking down just a little bit, and I want to feel this mostly in the body, not in the upper chest or anything. See that? So it's just the body kind of going down before he looks. All right, and I'll overshoot. In polish, what I'll do is I'll overshoot and just add that tiny little bit of texture on the top here with the ear, arm things. I'm not sure really what I'm designating these as. The nice thing about a flour sack rig, or I should say any rig that's non-human, is that you can designate it as whatever you want. A nice challenge for you guys would be to take this flour sack rig, which is just flour sack, like, I'm not even sure it has a, let me see here, reference editor. Flour sack 1.6. That was almost inappropriate here. Okay. You can download this on creativecrash.com. I would recommend anyone take the flour sack and do a couple scenes where the top things are ears, where the top things are hands, you know, do like a little wave. Where the top things are maybe eyes, you know, you can have them, you know, have them peek up and look around and then go down or something like that, and then do a shot where you actually make a transition between them. One thing that I love about the movie Cars, Pixar's Cars, is that in that film, within a shot, the tires change all the time from feet, like they'll be sitting there and they'll be like, oh, I don't know, kind of like pawing the ground with their feet, and they turn into hands. You know, he'll be like, you know, what's that over there? And he'll kind of like signal, or like he'll hit something or something with hands. It'll be shoulders. You know, the whole fender will kind of bend. You'll be like, I don't know. You know, so I love how they worked with that and they changed it and moved it around. It was really, really special for me in that film. Take this flour sack rig, any flour sack rig, or any non-human character, and actually practice giving the impression of those human body parts with your animation. I say this all the time. I love this story from Monsters, Inc., where Mike Wazowski and Sully are in the locker room and they're getting ready to go out onto the scare floor, and he has deodorant, or Sully has some deodorant, but Mike is out, and he's trying to smell himself, and he goes like this. He uses his mouth, that little like movement with the mouth, because he doesn't have a nose, but we just get the impression that there's a nose there. We feel like the air is being inhaled somehow when he does that. So practice that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm just going to, change these to be just a little bit more, moving, hold E. And I'm going to make sure I've got a key on the whole body right here. Not sure if you noticed, but down here it says result 143. That means that there's actually not even just 143 controllers. There's only 143 channels on this entire character. That is nothing. If you select a very complex character and you hit S, set key, see what it says. Normally it's like 400 to 600 on a normal biped with finger controls and a facial rig, something like that. 143 channels is nothing. It's actually very cool. So I'm going to have him just anticipate this just a little bit. Let me actually go into my side view here. And just anticipate it this way. And I actually think he should be leaning over more than he's tilting his head. This head tilt's not really working for me anymore. So let's have him actually lean this way. Now this is a tricky thing because in composition, we don't get much mileage for a pose like this in composition because we're staring right down the pipe, right? This is not a very big pose change. Even though I'm moving my hand this much, this is a big pose change. But this is moving at the exact same amount. Look at my hand alone, especially within the silhouette. It's a very, very, very small pose change. It's like it's growing like 20%. That's it. So in order to really get a strong impression, sometimes what you need to do is you need to cheat the anticipation a little bit. So he's going down here, so let's actually just cheat the anticipation back just a hair so that it kind of looks like he's actually hitting a little bit stronger of a pose. You know what, for me, this second one is really not reading. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make this my moving hold. And instead of him coming all the way back here, I'm going to copy this one, and I'm going to just retime this a little bit, anticipate, small anticipation, key everything, and then move him to be looking back at us. Oops. This anticipation might be a little too much. So let's just, I'm just middle mouse dragging and hitting set key until it's smaller. And now it's almost undetectable, but that's kind of what I wanted. All right, I definitely need to flat these tangents. Right here. Oh, okay. There we go. So now it's kind of a little bit of an evenly timed thing, and what I want to do is I want to go into this and break up the timing of that. All right, also, I kind of skipped over this section right here. Let's clean up this section before we move on. Okay, so he lands, and there's that overlap in the body, but then the body comes to a dead halt. So we definitely need a little bit of a moving hold right here. Now let's actually bias this moving hold a little bit more towards the end of it. So I'm going to take a middle key right here and create a full body key like 4 frames after the hold jump. You see that what that just did? Now he gets into this position, and then just a little bit of breath of life in the body in the wide section. So I biased that moving hold towards the end of the moving hold rather than the beginning. See how quick that was? Supernatural as well. Not supernatural like ghosts, but natural in a super way. Okay. Can you hear that? I hope you can't hear that. There's a car alarm going off in the lot next door. I hope it goes off. Okay. There we go. All right, so all right, a little bit maybe too much in the body here on these anticipations. Let me just tone these down. So I like that little reach. In fact, he should probably be, his moving hold should probably be actually forward. Leaning a little too far forward on this. Oops. Set it on the wrong key here. So recreate that. And instead of just cruising totally into it, let's bias it this way and flat this tangent, see what happens. Okay. And like I said, feeling that these anticipations are a little big. Maybe just a little bit smaller. I'm not sure why I'm anticipating him forward when he moves forward on this one. Just setting keys, just making sure everything is still kind of on the same frame, but all right, something weird's going on right here. What I have is I have a full body key set on a different frame than the rest, and my moving hold is actually looking like just like he is slipping. So I'm going to make this just a little bit of a longer hold. You see what I did? I mean, I have everything selected, but because I know that this, like frame 84 right here, well, it was 82, but I slid it, is a full body key. I can move it, I can slide it around. I'm doing really quick retiming on the fly, and then you're seeing me do this. I make the timing change, then I like click back here or whatever, and then I kind of watch it. This is the time when you want to be watching things at speed all the time. What did the Disney animators do when they were keyframing? Right? You would see them, they learn how to flip their drawings. You get their fingers in between the pages, and they're like, draw, right? That's what we're kind of emulating with this method of making the little adjustment and watching the small thing. When I was saying, though, that you shouldn't lose your fresh eyes when you're working on your animation, you shouldn't be watching it like over and over like this and trying to see at speed, like, oh, what am I going to adjust next? Oh, I just saw a problem. I think it was frame 170. And then going to frame 170, making a change, just like tweaking this one frame, and then watching again and saying, what am I going to work on next? Ooh, that's bad. Let's go to frame 90. I like to work through my animation. I like to be always keeping an eye on weights, an eye on arcs. I like to be able to make little timing adjustments. But when I say watch at speed, it doesn't mean lose your fresh eyes by play blasting all the time. It means just watching this little section, flipping the little section that you're working on. Okay? All right. This still looks like garbage, and I do want to adjust that, but I want to make sure that everything that we've done up to this point is certainly out of blocking and into blocking plus. So let's go back to my workflow checklist and take a look at some of these things. Arcs, weight check, those things I just mentioned. Compare thumbs. Watch at speed, make lists for notes. Really, the two that I haven't been doing too much in front of you right now is arcs and weight check. So let's go back in and just make sure that we're not creating anything for ourselves that's going to be a problem later. Always watch through your camera. I'm actually finding and falling in love with different camera angles as I go. In fact, I like the perspective window now better, so I'm just going to point and orient constrain the camera to there we go, to the perspective window, and then delete them, and now my camera one is same angle and framing as my perspective. Okay, so let's just see here. I'm going to do ourselves a favor and not even tempt fate by constraining the timeline to just the section that we were working on, and let's talk about arcs and weight. The thing about arcs is that you can't just track the arcs of the controllers that you're moving. You have to track the arcs of the entire character. It's hard because when you're moving your character, you have these limbs, right? And these limbs are connected to controllers. And it's like when you're posing your character, it's like you move the hips around, and then you like move the arm into position, and then you move the other arm into position, and then it's like, boom, this is your pose. And it's kind of misleading or misguiding. It gives you this impression that you need to only track the arcs of the controllers you're moving. It's like, okay, he's going to do a karate chop. Oh, well, then I'm just going to, chop like that. But if you're not looking at like the elbow, then you're missing part of the equation. If you look at the book called Force, I think the subtitle is Dynamic Life Drawing for Animators, but the title is Force, and it's a drawing book. It blows your mind in terms of how much you should really be considering as a connected part of a pose. So check it out if you can, but resist the temptation to be just like arc tracking hands, feet, and hips when you have this entire dynamic character. Like, see how I'm moving right here, and then my elbow actually overtakes in silhouette my body right here. That's a new force. That's a new leading edge for this force that overall is pushing this pose, right? So you best be tracking the arc on the back right here, and then seeing how it's been changed now that there's a new kind of leading force in that motion. You see what I'm getting at? So we're going to look at not just like the feet and the body, we're going to look at everything here and see what's going on. All right, it's good to watch at speed, but what I like to do, if you just turn the playback speed back and like playback by like 0.5, This is nice because you can kind of slow everything down. 0.5 is probably a little fast. 0.25. It's you know, a lot slower than the real thing, but it's a lot faster than framing through, and you can get a good impression of the arcs. If you have an arc tracking tool as well, then you can certainly use that. Okay, what I'm noticing is that everything is like the whole force is, it's very linear to the ground. Okay, and when you slow it down, just by the way, I know it looks like it's hitching and whatever, but that's a result of the playback speed being adjusted. Now that I've seen a couple areas to work on, I'm going to change it back to playback by 1. Okay, but I am kind of feeling that it is very linear into the landing right here, and I also want to track the arcs in the upper part, the upper chest, because it's a little bit crazy in here. What the impression I'm getting is that it kind of goes up and hooks in this section right here, and that's because of the overlap. But do you see what I'm talking about? We need to just figure out a way to smooth that out. Okay, so let's just do that. It's coming down. Yeah, see, I think we can fix pretty much all of this by just having this keyframe just be a little bit, oops, not that controller. This keyframe just being a little bit further out. Nope, too far. Yeah, that feels a lot better. However, as this leg is coming down, see how linear it is? And it's like really searching out the ground right here. Let's actually have it lagging behind at the head of the shot. And this one just a little bit too. And moving a little bit more on an arc. It's probably too much. Yeah, too much. Okay. Still just little tweaks right here. See, now they look like they're shooting forward, and that doesn't look good either. Let's just bring them both back. All right, this needs a breakdown. There's no key right here, so obviously we're see, the arc I'm tracking right here is, well, let's do this. Let's just make a motion trail on this, and you'll see. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to straighten this out. Not straighten this out, arc this. What am I talking about? I want this to be nice and parabolic into there. So what we may need is, I need to just adjust this up just a little bit, and this one up just a little bit. See? Oh, that looks so much better. God, the smallest adjustment can have the biggest change, can it not? Look how much better that looks on that foot. Oh, beautiful. All right, so let's just delete that motion trail. Okay. Okay. All right, so that's what I would do, like, for instance, on that foot. Love that new arc on that foot. And then let's just look up here and just see what's going on. Now, I could create a motion trail on that foot because the foot is very small, but, and it's like a point, so you can actually kind of like follow the point. But the top right here, if we create a motion trail on the top right here, yeah, see, look at it. How are you ever going to get any information from that? So yeah, that's not going to work. We need to really pay attention to the silhouette and what's going on right here. And what the impression I'm getting is that it's kind of shooting up right here, and then it kind of goes. The angle I'm kind of getting is like up like this and then down like that. It's just a little too sharp for me. So probably what I want to do is I probably want to have it be moving a little bit more outward, and oops, and on this frame, you know, just a little bit more lagged behind, so that it goes out and arcs around like this. All right, it's a little chattery. Let me figure out why. It's probably this frame. So let's tone this frame down a little bit. See what I did? I forget to point it out sometimes, but what I just did, I said, let's tone this frame down a little bit. I middle mouse drag, let go, hit S, boom. It was 50% of what it was before. So like I do that all the time, and try to point it out whenever I do. Oh, that's so much better. How much better is that already? Look at that. It's got this nice snap at the end of it too. So that's what I would do for tracking arcs. And in terms of weight, I would say this. I would say that everything feels pretty darn good for the most part, but we could do with a little bit more overlap or follow through rather on the body. So he comes down here, boom, but he really kind of hits, that's like the lowest he hits. So I would say maybe make this frame one frame later. I just slid it, and let's make it a little bit further forward. And let's have him dip a little bit deeper, but I'm going to make this adjustment looking at the graph editor instead. Let's see here. Yeah, I've got a lot of flat tangents in here. That's probably causing a little bit of trouble as well. Let me just make this adjustment right in the graph editor and see if I can kind of bullseye it, with one eye open here. All right. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Looking much improved. All right, well, I have a little timer going, and it seems like we're well over an hour now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do part 3 of this, and we are going to finish the shot in part 3. You've seen me take the first 60 frames all the way through blocking plus. I'm going to continue this and bring the rest of the shot, all 250 frames, into blocking plus, and then my final workflow lecture is going to be polishing this shot, all 250 frames. All right? Not bad. I would say this. We're going to spend probably about 7 hours total on this shot, and that's pretty good for a 250 frame shot. You can definitely trim down some of the parts of this workflow and make your own. There's no reason that this can't be, a starting point for you guys, and maybe you come up with one that's even better for the way that you think about animation. Okay? So, thank you for watching. Remember, there's going to be a big announcement soon. I'm very excited about it. This is kind of a news item, even though this lecture is, it's going to be in the store and people are going to watch this in years to come. They're going to be like, I wonder what the heck the big announcement was. But I'm very excited about it, so I'm just going to repeat that. Please, if you want to see a lecture, this lecture was by request. You guys were in the forums and you just said, hey, we'd like to see you do a shot. So why not, right? If you want to see a resource, you got to ask for it. So please participate in the forums. Go to the forum, the resource wish list in the forum, and put your ideas in, and lend your support to other people's ideas. And you can very much direct the course of the material on the site. Very happy that you're here. Thank you for all your support. I'm having a blast. All right. Good luck with your work. And as always, rock on.